Have you ever watched a powerful man fall so fast you almost didn't believe it was real? What if the very last signature that would ruin him forever was sitting right under his hand, and the only person brave enough to stop it was the woman refilling water glasses? The room smelled like leather, expensive cologne, and fear. A long glass table shined under bright lights, and every chair around it felt like it was holding its breath. At the head of the table sat Jack Hart, a billionaire everybody in the city used to point at like a legend. Today, he looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. His suit was clean, his watch was heavy gold, but his eyes were hollow, like the lights inside him had gone out. In front of him lay the bankruptcy papers, thick, neat, and final, stacked like a judge's sentence. Jack's hand hovered over the signature line, and the pen shook so hard it made a tiny scratching sound on the paper without even touching it, like his body was begging him to stop. Around him, 4 lawyers sat stiff with their hands folded, faces calm in the way people look calm when they're hiding something. A man in a gray suit cleared his throat softly and slid the papers a tiny inch closer, like he was pushing a coffin lid into place. "Mr. Hart," the head lawyer said, voice smooth, "this is the cleanest path. Sign and we end the bleeding." Jack swallowed. You could see his throat move like he was forcing down a stone. The bankruptcy would erase his company, sell his buildings, and make him a story people told as a warning. Outside that room, his name was still on billboards. Inside, he was already being erased. Then a small sound cut through the silence, soft footsteps, a tray clinking, water in glasses shaking from a trembling hand. At the edge of the room stood a waitress named Sarah Miller, early 20s, slim, tired eyes, hair pulled back tight, wearing a plain black and white uniform that looked like it had been washed too many times. She wasn't supposed to look at the table, and she wasn't supposed to speak, but her eyes were locked on the papers like she had just seen a snake under the glass. Her lips parted, her chest rose like she was gathering courage she didn't know she still had. "Sir," Sarah said, voice quiet but sharp, "please don't sign that." Every head turned so fast it felt like the air snapped. The head lawyer's face tightened in disgust, like a fly had landed on his food. "Excuse me," he barked. "This is a private meeting. Leave." Sarah's fingers gripped the tray so hard her knuckles went pale. Her hands were damp, not from nerves alone, but from a life of working and scrubbing and running without rest. She should have backed away, she should have apologized, but she didn't, because she had noticed something none of them expected anyone to notice. Not a billionaire, not a lawyer, not a banker, not a man in a perfect suit. A waitress. Sarah took one step closer, and the lawyer stood up like she had slapped him. "I said get out," he snapped, glaring at her as if his eyes could push her out of the room. Jack didn't move. He stared at Sarah, angry and desperate at the same time, because the strangest thing had happened. Her voice sounded sure, and nothing in his life had sounded sure in weeks. "What mistake?" Jack asked, his voice rough, like it hadn't been used for anything real in a long time. The lawyer quickly slid his hand toward the papers as if he could hide them. Sarah pointed to one section near the bottom, where the words were small and crowded. "That line," she said, "it's wrong, it doesn't match the rest." The banker on the left frowned. The lawyer laughed, short and mean. "She doesn't even know what she's looking at," he said, turning to Jack. "Mr. Hart, she's an employee of the catering service. She's confused. Sign and we'll handle the rest." Sarah's voice shook, but it did not break. "I'm not confused," she said. "I've seen this exact wording before, and if you sign it, you're not just declaring bankruptcy, you're giving away something you don't even know is in there." The lawyer's smile fell. It fell so fast it was like watching a mask slip off. Jack noticed that. He noticed how the lawyer's calm face suddenly had panic hiding under it. Jack's fingers tightened around the pen. "Bring it closer," Jack said to Sarah. The lawyer slammed his palm lightly on the table. "No," he said, too quickly, too loud. Jack's eyes narrowed. "I said bring it closer." For a second, nobody moved. The room felt like a rope pulled tight. The lawyer's jaw jumped. Then Jack pulled the papers toward himself. Sarah leaned in just enough to point again. "That part," she whispered, still loud enough for everyone to hear. "It says you agree to transfer all future claims, patents, and pending recoveries to a third party." Jack blinked. "Third party?" he repeated. "This is bankruptcy." The lawyer spoke fast. "Standard language, it means—" "No," Sarah cut in, and the room froze again because nobody cuts off a lawyer in front of a billionaire. "Standard language would list the bankruptcy court and the estate trustee. This lists a private company, not the court, not the trustee, a private company." Jack's eyes darted down the page. His brain, slow from stress, grabbed the words one by one like a drowning man grabbing air. "Private company, transfer, future claims, pending recoveries. Jack's mouth went dry, because there was one thing Jack still had, one last thing that could save him if he lost everything else. A lawsuit, a massive case against a rival who had sabotaged his supply chain and crushed his biggest contract. If he won that lawsuit, it could bring in hundreds of millions. It was the only hope his team kept whispering about in the dark. If this paper secretly handed that future payout to someone else, then signing meant he would lose even if he later won. It meant he'd be bankrupt now and robbed later. Jack looked up, eyes burning. "Who is the private company?" he demanded. The lawyer's face went stiff. "It's irrelevant," he said. "It's just legal phrasing." Sarah shook her head. "It's not irrelevant," she said. "It's the whole trick." A cold silence spread across the table. Jack's heart thumped hard, heavy, like it was trying to knock answers out of his ribs. "What's the company name?" Jack asked again, slower, more dangerous. The lawyer's mouth opened, but nothing came out fast enough. Jack scanned the line himself and saw it. A name he didn't expect. A name that didn't belong in his bankruptcy paperwork at all. Harbor Ridge Capital. Jack's stomach dropped. Harbor Ridge wasn't a court. Harbor Ridge wasn't a trustee. Harbor Ridge was a private investment firm that had been circling his business like a vulture for months, offering him help, offering him rescue, smiling too wide and asking too many questions. Jack had refused them. He had refused them again. And then suddenly everything got worse. His bank pulled support. His suppliers demanded cash only. His friends stopped returning calls. His board started whispering about a clean exit. And now Harbor Ridge was sitting inside the paper like a hidden knife. Jack slowly set the pen down. The banker shifted in his seat. The lawyer forced a thin smile. "Mr. Hart," he said, voice soft like syrup, "you're overwhelmed. That's why you hired us. Let professionals handle this." Jack's eyes slid to Sarah. "How did you notice this?" he asked. Sarah's throat moved. She looked like she wanted to run, but she stayed. "Because I've seen it before," she said. "My dad signed something like this." The lawyer rolled his eyes. "We are not here for personal stories," he snapped. But Jack's eyes stayed on Sarah. "Tell me," Jack said. Sarah took a breath, and in that breath you could hear years of pain that had been swallowed and hidden. "Dad had a small construction company," she began. "He wasn't rich like you, but he was good, honest. He built houses. One day his business started failing for no clear reason. His biggest client disappeared. His bank suddenly called his loans. Then a lawyer told him bankruptcy was the only way. They put a paper in front of him. They told him it was normal. He signed." Sarah's eyes glistened. "Later, we found out he had a lawsuit too. He had proof that somebody set him up. But when he won the case months later, we got nothing, because the bankruptcy papers had a hidden transfer. The money went to a private company instead." Sarah's voice tightened. "My dad never recovered. He died thinking he failed us." The room went quiet in a different way, less cold, more sharp. Jack stared at Sarah like she had just held up a mirror to his future. The lawyer's face darkened. "That has nothing to do with this case," he said, but his voice didn't sound as confident now. Jack leaned forward. "It has everything to do with this case," he said. Jack's mind raced backward, pulling up every strange event from the past 6 months like files thrown across a floor. The day his chief finance officer, Cole Bennett, told him their cash reserves were lower than expected. The day his wife, Megan Hart, stopped asking questions and started giving him calm advice like, "Maybe it's time to accept reality." The day Megan suggested he use a specific law firm for privacy, claiming a friend recommended them. This law firm, the same head lawyer now sweating under bright lights. Jack's fingers curled into a fist. He looked at the banker. "Did you see this clause?" Jack asked. The banker's eyes flicked away for half a second. A half second was all Jack needed. "Answer me," Jack said. The banker cleared his throat. "Our role is—" "Did you see it?" Jack repeated. The banker's silence was an answer. Jack turned back to the lawyer. "Remove Harbor Ridge from the document," Jack said. "Now." The lawyer's smile returned, but it looked sick. "It's not that simple," he said. "The paperwork is already filed in draft form. Adjusting it will delay the process, and delay is dangerous for you." Sarah shook her head. "Delay is dangerous for the people trying to trap him," she said, and the lawyer shot her a look full of hate. Jack's chest rose and fell. His voice dropped. "You said you're a waitress," Jack said to Sarah. "Why are you in this building? Why are you serving in this room?" Sarah hesitated, then spoke. "Because I work 2 jobs," she said. "Daytime, I clean at a small accounting office. Nights, I serve events here." Jack narrowed his eyes. "Accounting office," he repeated. "What kind of accounting office?" Sarah swallowed. "They do audits sometimes," she said carefully. Jack leaned back slightly, feeling something cold form in his gut, because Sarah didn't sound like someone guessing. She sounded like someone who knew paperwork. The head lawyer stood up, chair scraping. "This is over," he snapped. "Security." The door opened slightly, and a guard appeared, confused. Jack raised a hand without looking away from the lawyer. "Nobody moves," Jack said. His voice carried the kind of power that money gives when it is cornered. The guard froze. Jack looked at Sarah again. "Do you have proof?" Jack asked. Sarah's eyes widened. "Proof? Proof that this clause is wrong," Jack said. "Proof that it's not standard. Proof that someone put it there on purpose." Sarah's fingers trembled. I have something," she admitted. "What?" Jack pressed. Sarah took a breath and reached into her apron pocket slowly, like she was pulling out a live wire. The lawyer lunged forward. "Absolutely not," he snapped. Jack slammed his palm on the table hard. The sound cracked through the room like a warning shot. "Sit down," Jack said to the lawyer, and the lawyer froze, then slowly sat, eyes burning. Sarah pulled out her phone. The screen was cracked. The phone looked cheap, but what she was holding felt like power. "Last month," Sarah said, "I was cleaning in the accounting office and I saw a folder left open. I shouldn't have looked, I know, but I did because I saw the name Harbor Ridge." Jack's eyes flicked to the clause again. Harbor Ridge, his pulse jumped. "In the folder," Sarah continued, "there was a template, a special bankruptcy add-on. Those were the words at the top. It had the same clause, same wording, same trick." Sarah scrolled, hands shaking. "I took pictures because I thought maybe one day I'd meet someone it could save." The room went silent again, and this time even the banker looked scared. Sarah turned the phone and showed Jack a photo. Jack leaned in. His eyes scanned the image. The words matched, the clause matched, the private transfer matched. Only the victim's name was different, someone else, months ago, just like Sarah's dad. Jack's mouth went dry. He looked up slowly, eyes sharp now, awake in a way he hadn't been in months. "So this is a system," Jack said, more to himself than to them. "They run companies into the ground, then steal the recovery." The lawyer forced a laugh. "Conspiracy," he said. "This is ridiculous." Jack didn't laugh. Jack turned his head toward the glass wall of the conference room. Outside, blurred figures walked past, living normal lives, not knowing a man's empire was about to be buried. Jack's voice turned low. "Who hired you?" Jack asked the lawyer. The lawyer's smile broke. "You did," he said. Jack's eyes narrowed. "No," Jack said. "My wife recommended you." The lawyer's face tightened, just a flicker like a flinch, and Jack saw it. Jack felt the room tilt. "Megan," Jack whispered, and the name tasted bitter in his mouth. Sarah looked confused. "Your wife?" she asked softly. Jack didn't answer yet. His mind pulled up Megan's calm face, Megan's gentle voice, Megan's hand on his shoulder whispering, "Sign it, Jack. Let it go. We can start over." He remembered how she didn't cry when he told her the company might fail. He remembered how she didn't panic. She only looked relieved. Jack's fingers trembled, but not from fear now, from rage. He looked at the banker. "Who benefits if I sign?" Jack asked. The banker's eyes darted to the lawyer. The lawyer's eyes darted to the banker. That tiny exchange told Jack everything. Jack stood up slowly, and the room felt smaller under his weight. "I built heart systems from a rented garage," Jack said, voice steady. "I paid people on time. I built hospitals and schools. I gave bonuses when nobody else did. And now you want me to sign a paper that hands my last hope to the same people who destroyed me?" The lawyer raised his hands. "Mr. Hart," Jack cut him off. "You are done," Jack said. "This meeting is done." Jack grabbed the papers and tore the last page off, the signature page right in front of them. The banker gasped. The lawyer shot up from his seat. "You can't do that," he barked. Jack stared him down. "I can do whatever I want with a paper I haven't signed," Jack said, "and you just lost your chance to control my fear." Sarah exhaled like she had been holding her breath for years, but relief lasted only 1 second because the lawyer's face twisted into something ugly. "You think you're safe?" the lawyer hissed. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Jack stepped closer. "Then explain it to me," Jack said. "Explain why Harbor Ridge is inside my bankruptcy documents." The lawyer's eyes flashed. "You want truth," he said, voice sharp. "Fine, the truth is you're finished. Your money is already gone, your accounts are frozen, your partners have moved on, you're standing on air, Mr. Hart, and you can scream all you want, but the fall is still coming." Jack's chest tightened. "Frozen," he repeated. The banker looked away again. Jack's stomach dropped. Jack turned to the banker. "Are my accounts frozen?" Jack demanded. The banker hesitated. That hesitation was the loudest sound in the room. Jack's hands clenched. "Answer," Jack said. The banker swallowed. "There were protective measures," he said. Jack felt heat flood his face. "Protective for who?" Jack snapped. The banker didn't answer. Jack spun toward the door. "Call my personal attorney," Jack barked at his assistant, who had been sitting silent in the corner, pale and shaking. The assistant blinked fast. Sir, I tried earlier, he stammered. He's not picking up. Jack froze. His personal attorney not picking up was like the sun not rising. Jack turned back slowly. The lawyer's smile returned. Funny how people stop answering, the lawyer said softly. It's almost like someone told them not to. Jack's heart pounded. Betrayal started stacking up like bricks in his chest. The law firm, the banker, the frozen accounts, the missing attorney. And now the biggest question of all, Megan. Jack looked at Sarah. Why did you really speak up? He asked, voice quieter now. Sarah's eyes shimmered. Because I know what it feels like when the world watches you drown and nobody reaches out, she said. Jack swallowed hard. For a second, he saw his own reflection in the glass, rich suit, tired eyes, shaking hands, and he didn't look like a billionaire. He looked like a man about to be stolen from. The lawyer suddenly pointed at Sarah. Get her out, he ordered the guard, voice urgent now, not arrogant. The guard took a step forward. Jack lifted a hand again. Don't touch her, Jack said. The guard stopped. The lawyer's face turned red. She has stolen documents, he shouted. Sarah flinched. Jack stared at the lawyer. If she stole documents, Jack said, then you'll be happy to explain them in court. The banker stood up slowly, eyes wide. Mr. Hart, he said, you need to be careful. You are not seeing the full picture. Jack's eyes hardened. Then show me, Jack said. The banker hesitated, then spoke in a low voice like he hated every word. Harbor Ridge has an agreement, he said. They're positioned to acquire your remaining assets after bankruptcy. That's why this clause exists. It ensures the recovery stream goes to them. Jack's breath caught. So you admit it, Jack said. The banker's shoulders sagged. This was planned, Jack whispered. The lawyer leaned forward, voice cold. Planned, yes, he said, because you didn't listen when people offered you a softer landing. Jack's eyes narrowed. Who planned it? Jack asked. The lawyer smiled slowly, cruelly, like he had been waiting to say it. Ask the person who convinced you to come here, he said. Ask the person who kept telling you to sign. Jack's blood went cold. Sarah's eyes widened as she understood. Wife, Sarah whispered. Jack's phone buzzed in his pocket at that exact moment like the universe wanted perfect timing. Jack pulled it out. One notification. A bank alert, then another, then another. Each one felt like a punch. Transfer initiated, transfer initiated, transfer initiated. Jack's eyes flicked to the sender details, and his stomach dropped so hard he almost couldn't stand. The transfers were authorized, using a secondary approval code that only 2 people had. Jack. And Megan. Jack stared at the screen, unable to breathe right. No, he whispered, like saying it could make it untrue. The lawyer watched him and smiled, satisfied. She's faster than you, the lawyer murmured. Jack's hands shook as he scrolled, and then he saw it, an email confirmation tied to the transfers and the contact name listed under the approval, Megan Hart. Jack's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked up slowly, eyes wet, rage and heartbreak mixing into something dangerous. She betrayed me, Jack said, voice broken. Sarah stepped closer, her face tight with fear and pity. Mr. Hart, she said urgently, look at the date on the clause, look closely. Jack blinked and forced his eyes back onto the paper. His finger traced the line Sarah pointed at, and then he saw something else, smaller than the company name, smaller than the transfer language, but louder than everything in the room. A filing date that didn't match today, a stamp that should not exist yet. Meaning these papers had been prepared and positioned long before Jack even agreed to sign, meaning somebody had decided his ending in advance. Jack's eyes lifted, locking onto the lawyer like a weapon. How long? Jack asked. How long have you been planning to bury me? The lawyer leaned back, calm again like he enjoyed pain. Long enough, he said. Jack's chest rose fast. His mind screamed for answers. He turned to Sarah, voice low and shaking. If you have photos of the template, Jack said, then you can prove this is a scheme. Sarah nodded quickly. Yes, she said. But what? Jack demanded. Sarah swallowed hard. The template had a client list, she said. A list of people they targeted. Jack's stomach tightened. Do you remember any names? Jack asked. Sarah hesitated, then nodded, her eyes filling again. One of the names, she whispered, was yours, and next to it had a note. Jack's voice dropped to a whisper. What note? Sarah's lips trembled. It said, she breathed, approved by spouse. Jack's whole body went still. The room blurred for a second as if his brain refused to accept it. Approved by spouse. The lawyer's smile widened like a wound. Jack stood there with the torn signature page in his hand, the pen on the table, his life splitting into a before and after, and the only person who had tried to save him was the waitress everyone wanted to throw out. Jack's eyes burned with tears he refused to let fall. He looked at Sarah, then at the banker, then at the lawyer, and finally at the door, like he could already see Megan on the other side, calm, smiling, pretending she loved him while she emptied him. Jack's voice came out quiet but terrifying. If my wife signed off on my destruction, Jack said, then this isn't just bankruptcy. He stepped closer to the table, leaning in like a man who had nothing left to lose. This is war in a suit. And just as Jack reached for his phone to call Megan, the conference room door opened again, this time with purpose, and a man in a dark suit walked in holding a sealed envelope. He looked at the lawyers first, then at Jack, then at Sarah. "Mr. Hart," the man said, "I was told to deliver this to you personally." Jack's hands trembled as he took the envelope. The lawyer's face tightened like he recognized it. Jack tore it open, eyes scanning the first line. Then his breath stopped completely because the letter wasn't from the bank and it wasn't from the court. It was a private notice from Harbor Ridge, and it contained one sentence that made Jack's knees go weak. "Congratulations, Mr. Hart, your spouse has accepted our offer." Jack stood there with the envelope in his hand like it weighed more than the whole table, and the room felt colder even though the lights were still bright, because the sentence inside it wasn't just a threat, it was proof that someone had been smiling in his face while signing away his future. He read it again, slower this time, like slowing down could make the words change, but they stayed the same. "Congratulations, Mr. Hart, your spouse has accepted our offer." And for one long second Jack couldn't hear anything except the blood pounding in his ears, and then the sound came rushing back all at once. The banker shifting in his seat like he wanted to disappear, the head lawyer breathing too evenly like a man who believed he had already won, the guard's shoes squeaking slightly on the polished floor, and Sarah's shallow, nervous breaths beside Jack like she was scared her courage would run out. Jack raised his eyes and looked straight at the head lawyer, not with panic anymore, but with something sharper, the kind of calm that comes right before a storm, and he asked in a slow, steady voice, "So you're telling me my wife did business with the people who destroyed me?" And the lawyer gave a small shrug, pretending it was boring, pretending it was normal, but his eyes were bright with satisfaction, and that was what almost made Jack lose control. Because it told Jack this wasn't just an accident or a misunderstanding, it was entertainment to them. Jack's hand tightened around the envelope until it crumpled. Then he forced his fingers to loosen because he needed his mind clear. And he turned to the banker again. "You knew," he said, and it wasn't even a question, it was a statement, and the banker's face tightened like a man caught stealing. "Mr. Hart, I'm trying to keep you from making a mistake," the banker said, but Jack laughed once, short and bitter, because the banker's idea of help was watching him walk into a trap. Sarah stepped closer, her voice soft but urgent. "Mr. Hart, don't let them rush you," she whispered, and that small sentence did something to Jack's chest, because for weeks he had been surrounded by people who pushed him towards surrender, yet the only person telling him to slow down was the waitress everyone wanted to throw out, and it made Jack realize something painful. The people who had the most to gain from his fall were the ones acting the most professional about it. Jack lifted his phone, thumb hovering over Megan's contact, and the head lawyer leaned forward with fake concern. "Call her," he said, smiling. "I'm sure she'll explain everything in a way that makes you feel better." And that smile made Jack's stomach twist, because it wasn't the smile of a man confident in the truth, it was the smile of a man confident in a lie that has been rehearsed. Jack pressed call, put the phone to his ear, and as it rang he stared at the lawyer like he was trying to read the next move before it happened. One ring, two rings, three. Then Megan answered in a voice that sounded warm, almost cheerful, like she had been waiting for this moment. "Jack, hi," she said gently. "Are you done with the meeting?" And Jack felt his breath catch because the timing was too clean, like she already knew where he was, what was happening, what he was holding in his hand, and he forced his voice to stay level. "Megan, why is Harbor Ridge sending me letters congratulating me because my spouse accepted an offer?" And for half a second there was silence, but it wasn't the silence of shock, it was the silence of calculation, the kind of pause people take when they are choosing which version of the story to tell, and then Megan sighed softly, like he was the one being difficult. "Jack," she said, "please don't do this right now, you're already stressed." And the calm in her voice hit him like a slap, because it was the calm of someone who thought she could control the room even from miles away. Jack's fingers trembled, and his voice dropped lower. "Answer me," he said, and Megan's tone changed slightly, still gentle but colder underneath. "I did what I had to do," she said, and Jack blinked hard. "What you had to do," he repeated, and he heard Sarah inhale sharply beside him like she couldn't believe the words either. Megan continued, You were going to lose everything anyway, Jack. I found a way for us to survive." And Jack almost laughed again because she kept saying, "us," like she hadn't just stabbed him alone. "Survive," Jack said, "by selling me." And the head lawyer's smile widened, and that image burned into Jack's mind. The lawyer sitting right there, listening to Jack's wife confirm betrayal like it was a business update. Megan's voice turned defensive. "Don't talk to me like that," she snapped softly. "I didn't sell you, I protected myself." And that was the first honest thing she said, and Jack's throat tightened like he couldn't swallow it. "So you planned this," Jack said. "You pushed me to these lawyers, you pushed me to sign." And Megan replied, "I pushed you to accept reality." And the words "accept reality" made Jack's eyes sting because that had been her favorite phrase for weeks, delivered like a loving wife. But now he could hear what it really meant. Accept defeat, accept the trap, accept that you are about to be harvested. Jack looked around the table at the stiff lawyers, the nervous banker, the guard, and he realized he wasn't in a meeting. He was in a staged ending, a performance where everybody already knew the final scene except him. Jack forced his voice steady again. "Megan," he said, "what exactly did you accept?" And Megan hesitated, then said, "A settlement," and Jack's heart pounded harder. "A settlement for what?" He asked, and Megan's voice slipped back into that calm tone like she was reading from a script. "For cooperation," she said, "for transitioning smoothly, for not making a mess, for not fighting a war you can't win." And Jack's jaw clenched, because the word cooperation sounded like a dirty word now. Sarah leaned closer to Jack, whispering, "Ask her about the approval code." And Jack felt his spine go rigid, because yes, his bank alerts showed transfers authorized with Megan's code, and he said into the phone, "Did you use my secondary approval code to move money?" And Megan didn't even deny it. She just said, "You weren't going to handle it, Jack. You were spiraling." And Jack's eyes closed for a moment, because that was another knife. She was painting him as unstable so she could wear betrayal like a rescue mission. Jack opened his eyes and said, "You took the little that was left." And Megan answered, "I moved it." And Jack said, "To where?" And Megan's silence came back, longer this time, and Jack heard a faint sound on her end, like she was in a car, like life was moving forward for her while his life was being cut apart. Jack asked again, "To where, Megan?" And she finally said, "Somewhere safe." And Jack's voice rose a little, "Safe for who?" And Megan snapped, "For me." And then she softened again too fast. "Jack, listen, if you just sign the papers, you'll be released from the debt. You'll get a clean slate, and we can rebuild." And Jack's eyes flashed, "We." He repeated, "You mean you and your new partners?" And Megan's voice went quiet. Then she said the words that made Jack's stomach drop deeper than before. "Jack, I already left the house," she said. "I took my things." And Jack stood frozen, staring at the table, because the betrayal wasn't only financial, it was personal. It was a life being removed while he was distracted by paperwork. Sarah's face turned pale, and Jack asked, "Where are you?" And Megan said, "Don't come looking." And Jack felt something in him crack, not into a mess, but into clarity. He had been living next to an enemy who wore his ring and slept in his bed. Jack turned his head slightly and saw the head lawyer watching him like this was the moment he enjoyed most. And Jack realized the lawyer probably knew Megan had left before Jack even did. Jack lowered his voice and said into the phone, "You didn't just leave me, you set me up." And Megan's tone went sharp. "I didn't set you up, Jack, you set yourself up by being arrogant," she said. "You thought you were untouchable." And Jack's eyes burned because she was blaming him while admitting she benefited, and he almost wanted to scream, but he didn't, because screaming would be what they expected, and Jack refused to give them that. He said quietly, "Tell me the truth, Megan. Did you ever love me?" And there was another pause, and it felt like the longest pause of his life. And then Megan said, "Love doesn't pay bills." And the sentence was so cold and simple it made Sarah's eyes fill with tears. And Jack's chest tightened so hard he felt like he couldn't breathe, because that sentence erased years in one breath, like their marriage had been a contract all along. Jack's hand shook, and he ended the call without another word because he couldn't listen to her voice anymore, not in front of people who were enjoying his pain. The room was silent, but it wasn't respectful silence. It was waiting silence, like they were waiting for him to collapse. And the head lawyer said, "Now you see," in a voice that sounded almost kind, "signing is mercy." And Jack stared at him, eyes wet but steady, and he said, "You think she's the only betrayal?" And the lawyer's brow lifted as if amused. What are you talking about? He asked, and Jack turned to Sarah, holding up her cracked phone. You said the template had a client list. Jack said, show me. And Sarah nodded, hands trembling as she scrolled. Then she hesitated, looking at the guard and the lawyer like she was afraid they'd grab her. And Jack's voice hardened. Nobody touches her, he said to the guard without looking away. And the guard stayed still, unsure, because even guards know the difference between a man begging and a man deciding. Sarah found the photo and held it up, and Jack leaned in, eyes scanning the blurry list, and his heart thumped because the list wasn't small. It wasn't one or two victims. It was a pattern: names, dates, notes, and next to some names a small word. Spouse, next to others. Board, next to others. Bank, like they had different ways to trap different people. Jack's eyes moved down the list until he saw his own name again, and next to it, approved by spouse, just like Sarah said, and then something else that made Jack's fingers go numb. Next to his name was another note, smaller, almost hidden: secondary asset, case payout, meaning they were not just stealing his present, they were stealing his future victory too. Jack looked up slowly at the banker. You let them freeze my accounts, he said, and the banker swallowed. It was risk management, he tried, and Jack snapped. It was sabotage, and the banker's eyes fell because the truth was heavy. The head lawyer leaned back, pretending none of this mattered. Even if your clause is adjusted, he said smoothly, your bankruptcy is inevitable. And Jack felt a strange calm settle in, because they kept pushing him toward hopelessness like it was a product they were selling, and Jack had been close to buying it, until Sarah stepped into his life with a tray and a cracked phone. Jack turned to Sarah. Why did you keep those photos? He asked, and Sarah's voice shook as she spoke. Because I promised myself I wouldn't watch it happen again, she said, and Jack saw something in her eyes that wasn't just fear, it was history, and he realized her pain made her brave. Jack stepped away from the table, packing slowly, mind racing, and he asked the question nobody in the room wanted him to ask. How did Harbor Ridge know my wife would betray me? And the head lawyer's smile flickered just a little, and Jack saw it and pressed harder. Because you didn't recruit her last week, Jack said. You didn't recruit her yesterday, you recruited her long before I got to this table. And the banker's jaw tightened, and Sarah whispered. It started earlier, like she was putting pieces together too, and Jack stopped packing and stared straight at the lawyer. How long have you been in my home? He asked, and the lawyer laughed softly. Don't be dramatic, he said, and Jack's voice went low. Not in my living room, Jack said, in my life, and the lawyer's laughter faded, and Jack knew he was getting close. Jack suddenly remembered little moments he had ignored. Megan asking about his lawsuit, Megan asking who his witnesses were, Megan asking about settlement ranges, pretending it was supportive curiosity, and Jack's stomach turned, because those questions weren't from a wife worried about stress. They were from someone gathering data. Jack looked at Sarah again. Do you remember the other names? He asked, and Sarah nodded, then scrolled again, and her eyes widened like she saw something she hadn't noticed before. Mr. Hart, she whispered, voice trembling. There's another page, and Jack leaned in as Sarah flipped to the next photo, and the title at the top made Jack's breath stop. Internal contacts, and under it were names that weren't victims. They were people inside companies, inside banks, inside legal teams, people who could open doors quietly. And Jack scanned the list until he saw one that made his heart slam. Cole Bennett, his chief finance officer. Jack's lips parted, and for a moment he couldn't speak, because Cole was the man who had been beside him for years, the man who told him the numbers, the man who warned him of cash flow drops, the man Jack trusted to guard the company's heartbeat. And if Cole's name was on an internal contacts list, then Jack hadn't just been attacked from the outside, he had been eaten from the inside. Jack's eyes turned wild, but his voice stayed controlled. Cole, Jack said quietly, and the banker flinched at the name like it was dangerous. The head lawyer leaned forward again. You're spiraling, he said with fake concern. This is why you should sign. And Jack snapped his gaze to the lawyer. You keep calling it spiraling, he said, but I think you're scared. And the lawyer's jaw tightened, and Jack felt a dark satisfaction because yes, something about Sarah's photos had shifted power in the room. Jack turned to the guard. Close the door, Jack ordered, and the guard hesitated, looking at the lawyer, but Jack's stare held him, and the guard closed it. The click sounded loud, like a lock. Jack then looked at his assistant. Call my security chief, he said, not my lawyer, and the assistant nodded quickly, fingers fumbling, and the head lawyer stood up fast. You can't detain us, he snapped, and Jack stepped forward, voice calm. "I'm not detaining you," he said. "I'm protecting myself from criminals." And the banker stood abruptly. "Mr. Hart, please," he said. "This is going to become messy." And Jack answered, "It already is." And Sarah stood frozen, fear in her eyes. And Jack looked at her. "You did the right thing," he said, and Sarah swallowed hard. "I hope so," she whispered. The head lawyer reached into his jacket like he was about to grab something, and the guard took a step, and Jack's assistant stiffened, and the room held its breath again. But then the lawyer simply pulled out his own phone and smiled. "You can call whoever you want," he said. "Harbor Ridge doesn't lose." And Jack stared at him. "That's what you think," Jack said. Then Jack's phone buzzed again, and he looked down expecting another bank alert. But it was an unknown number texting a single sentence. "Stop digging or she pays." And Jack's stomach clenched because she could only mean one person in the room who mattered to him right now, Sarah. Jack lifted his eyes slowly to the lawyer, and the lawyer's smile told him everything, because the lawyer knew about the text before Jack even said a word. Sarah noticed Jack's face change, and she whispered, "What is it?" And Jack didn't answer immediately because his mind was racing, because this was how these people controlled outcomes. Not with truth, but with fear. Jack tightened his grip on his phone, and the head lawyer said softly, "Do you understand now?" He asked, "You can't fight a machine," and Jack felt anger rise like fire, but under the anger was something else, a new purpose, because the text was proof of intimidation, proof they were willing to threaten a waitress to protect a clause, and that meant they were afraid of what Sarah held. Jack looked at Sarah, voice low. "Stay close," he said, and Sarah's eyes widened. "What's happening?" she asked, and Jack forced a calm tone for her sake. "They're trying to scare us," he said, and Sarah's face tightened with fear, but she nodded, and Jack respected her for that, because bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's moving while fear is screaming. The assistant's call connected, and Jack spoke quickly, "Get to the conference room now," then he hung up. The head lawyer sighed like bored patience. "Mr. Hart," he said, "you can make calls and throw tantrums, but the truth is the money is already moving." And Jack stared at him. "Then I'll follow the money," Jack said, and the banker's face drained of color, because bankers fear one thing more than anger, they fear exposure. Sarah whispered, "Mr. Hart, the photos can go to the police." And the lawyer laughed. "The police," he said. "Sweetheart, you think Harbor Ridge is scared of a badge?" And Sarah flinched at the word sweetheart, not because it was affectionate, but because it was meant to shrink her, to remind her she was small. Jack leaned toward the lawyer, voice ice cold. "You keep calling her sweetheart," Jack said, "but she's the reason I'm still standing." And the lawyer's smile faded, and Jack saw hate now, real hate, because predators hate when prey fights back. The banker tried again. "Mr. Hart, please, you're making this worse." And Jack turned on him. "Tell me something," Jack said. "If this is all normal, why did my bank freeze my accounts right before this signing? Why did my lawyer stop answering? Why is my spouse accepting offers behind my back? Why is there a private firm named in my bankruptcy papers?" And the banker's mouth opened and closed, and he had no clean answer because there wasn't one. Sarah's phone buzzed too, and she gasped softly, eyes dropping to the screen, and Jack's heart sank as he saw her hands shake harder. "Mr. Hart," Sarah whispered, "I just got a message." And she turned the phone slightly so he could see, and the message said, "We know where your mother sleeps." And Sarah's face crumpled like she was trying not to cry. "My mom," she whispered, voice breaking, and Jack felt a surge of anger so strong it almost made him dizzy, because this wasn't business anymore, it was cruelty. Jack stepped between Sarah and the lawyer like a shield, and he said quietly, "They want you to back down." And Sarah's lips trembled. "I can't lose my mom," she whispered, and Jack nodded slowly. "You won't," he said, but inside he knew he couldn't promise safety without being smarter than the people who threatened mothers in texts. The head lawyer lifted his hands, pretending innocence. "I have no idea what you're talking about," he said, but his eyes were pleased, and Jack wanted to smash something, but he didn't, because he understood something important now. Their power grew when he reacted. Jack took a breath, then spoke to the whole room in a measured voice. "Everyone here is going to stay until my security chief arrives," he said, and the lawyer scoffed. "And if we leave?" he asked, and Jack replied, "Then you'll explain in court why a waitress got threatened the moment she showed evidence of a fraudulent clause." And the lawyer's smile tightened, because that was a cleaner threat, a threat that used truth instead of violence. The room stayed tense, and seconds felt like hours, and Jack watched Sarah from the corner of his eye and saw how she was trying to be strong while fear squeezed her, and he realized she wasn't just a random hero, she was a person with something to lose, and that made this harder. Jack turned to Sarah gently, keeping his voice simple. "Where is your mom right now?" he asked, and Sarah swallowed. "At home," she said. "Small apartment, east side," and Jack nodded, then pulled his own phone again and texted his security chief. "Send someone to protect Sarah's mother now." And when he hit send, the head lawyer's eyes narrowed, because Jack had moved faster than they expected. The banker's voice shook. "Mr. Hart, please," he said. "You don't want to create enemies." And Jack stared at him with tired fury. "I didn't create them," he said. "I married one." And Sarah's eyes flicked up at him, and Jack saw pain there too, like she understood betrayal in a way richer people often pretend they don't. The door finally opened, and Jack's security chief entered with two men, all in dark suits, faces serious, and the lawyer's posture changed immediately, still proud, but less playful, because predators hate when protection arrives. "Sir," the security chief said, eyes scanning the room, "you called," and Jack nodded and said, "Yes." Then he pointed at Sarah. "She's under my protection now," and Sarah's eyes widened. "Mr. Hart," she began, but Jack lifted a hand. "Not a discussion," he said, then turned to the security chief. "Get someone to her mother right now." And the security chief nodded instantly and spoke into an earpiece. The lawyer's face hardened. "This is unnecessary drama," he said, and Jack replied, "No," he said. "This is what happens when people like you try to scare poor women into silence," and the lawyer's eyes narrowed. Jack then looked at the security chief. "Also," Jack said, "I need a copy of the building's security footage from the moment this meeting started." And the banker stiffened, and the lawyer's mouth tightened, because footage could show the envelope delivery, their reactions, the timing, and timing matters in court. The head lawyer spoke quickly. "That footage is confidential," he said, and Jack smiled without warmth. "So is my life," he said, "and yet you all tried to sell it." And the security chief nodded again like he already understood his job. Sarah clutched her phone like it was the only thing keeping her upright, and Jack turned to her and said softly, "You are not alone in this." And Sarah blinked hard, fighting tears. "I didn't want trouble," she whispered, and Jack answered, "Trouble found you," and that simple truth landed heavy. Then Jack's assistant spoke from the corner, voice trembling, "Sir, there's another email," and Jack turned. "From who?" he asked, and the assistant swallowed. "From your board," he said. "They're calling an emergency vote," and Jack's chest tightened again, because of course they were. This was the other blade, the board, the people who could push him out while he was bleeding, and Jack took the phone and read. "Due to instability and reputational risk, the board will vote to remove you as CEO effective immediately." And Jack stared at it, feeling the betrayal spread wider, because this meant his own company was being turned against him at the same time. The head lawyer smiled again. "See," he said softly, "it's over." And Jack turned his head slowly, eyes blazing. "No," Jack said, "it's just finally visible." And Sarah whispered, "They planned everything." And Jack nodded. "Yes," he said, "and they planned it because they thought I'd be too broken to fight back." And he looked at Sarah. "They didn't plan for you," he said, and Sarah's lips trembled because being unplanned in a rich man's war was terrifying. Jack's security chief stepped closer. "Sir, what's the next move?" he asked, and Jack looked down at Sarah's phone again, at the photos, at the client list, at the internal contacts, at Cole Bennett's name, and Jack felt a cold certainty form. Someone inside his company was still feeding Harbor Ridge, and if he moved wrong, they would erase evidence before he could grab it. Jack spoke slowly, choosing each word. "We go to my office," he said, and the banker jolted. "You can't," he said quickly. "Your access." Then he stopped, realizing he had said too much, and Jack's eyes narrowed. "My access is restricted," Jack said, and the banker said nothing, and that silence was another confession. Jack turned to the security chief. "We go now," he said, then he looked at Sarah. "You're coming," and Sarah's eyes widened, fear and disbelief mixing. "Me," she whispered, and Jack said, "Yes," because she was the key, and also because leaving her alone right now would be dangerous. The head lawyer stood, voice sharp. "If you walk out, you'll regret it," he threatened, and Jack looked him in the eye. "I already regret letting you into my life," he said, and then Jack did something that surprised even himself. He slid the unsigned bankruptcy papers across the table toward the lawyer and said, "Keep them," he said, "frame them." Then he tapped the crumpled Harbor Ridge envelope. "But this," he said, "is evidence," and he turned away. The security team moved, forming a protective space around Jack and Sarah, and as they headed to the door, Sarah whispered, "Mr. Hart, what if they really hurt my mom?" And Jack's voice softened. "They won't," he said, "because I just made your mother expensive to touch." And Sarah swallowed, not fully understanding, and Jack kept it simple. "Bad people avoid attention," he said. "We're about to give them too much." They walked down the hall, and Jack's mind raced with everything he needed to do. Find Cole, secure his own company's servers, stop the board vote, freeze the freeze, protect Sarah's mother, expose Harbor Ridge, and most of all understand how Megan got pulled in. Because betrayal that deep usually has a starting point. Sarah walked beside him, trying to keep up, and she whispered, "Why would your wife do this?" And Jack's face tightened. "Because she wanted out," he said, then paused, then added, "or because someone promised her a life she thought she deserved." And those words tasted like poison. When they reached the elevator, Jack's phone buzzed again, this time a message from a number he recognized. Cole Bennett, it said, "Jack, we need to talk. Please don't do anything crazy. Meet me alone." And Jack stared at it, heart thumping, because "meet me alone" was exactly what a man says when he thinks he still has control. Jack showed the message to Sarah, and Sarah's eyes widened. "That name is on the list," she whispered, and Jack nodded slowly. "Yes," he said, "and he's calling me like nothing is wrong." And the elevator doors opened with a soft ding, and Jack felt the building's calm luxury around him like a mask hiding a crime. Jack stepped into the elevator with Sarah and security, and as the doors began to close, Jack's assistant rushed forward, face pale, holding another phone. "Sir," he gasped. "It's Mrs. Hart," and Jack froze, because Megan was calling again, and Jack's stomach twisted, and he looked at the screen as her name lit up like a ghost. Sarah whispered, "Don't answer," but Jack's eyes hardened, because if Megan was calling now, it meant she had new information or new fear, and Jack lifted the phone and answered on speaker. "What?" he said, and Megan's voice came through, fast and tense for the first time. "Jack, listen to me," she said. "Harbor Ridge is not the only problem," and Jack's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, and Megan swallowed audibly. "Cole isn't just your CFO," she whispered. "He's the one who brought them in." And Jack's heart slammed, and Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Megan's voice trembled. "I didn't start this," she said quickly. "I got pulled in." And Jack's jaw clenched. "Pulled in by what?" he asked, and Megan's voice dropped to a whisper like she was afraid of being heard. "By a video," she said, "by proof." And Jack's blood ran cold, because blackmail is the fastest road to betrayal. Megan continued, words rushing now. "They showed me something, Jack, something that would destroy you, destroy us, destroy everything, and they said if I didn't cooperate they would release it and you would go to prison." And Jack's mouth went dry. "Prison," he repeated, and Megan's voice cracked. "I didn't know what was real," she whispered. "I didn't know who to trust, and then Cole told me the only way to survive was to agree." And Jack's eyes flashed with rage at Cole's name, and Sarah stared at Jack like she was watching the story twist in real time. Jack forced his voice steady. "Where are you?" he asked Megan again, and Megan hesitated, then said, "In a hotel," and Jack said, "Which one?" And Megan whispered, "Don't come," and Jack snapped, "Which one?" And Megan said a name quickly, then added, "Jack, please, you don't understand, they're watching you." And Jack's stomach turned, because of course they were. Megan rushed on. "Cole texted me," she said. "He said if you don't sign by tonight, Sarah will disappear and they'll blame you." And Sarah gasped softly, and Jack's fists clenched so hard his nails dug into his skin. Jack's voice went low and dangerous. "So they've moved from stealing to threatening lives," he said, and Megan whispered, "I'm sorry," and Jack almost laughed at the word sorry. Because sorry doesn't return years, sorry does unsigned offers, sorry doesn't erase the sentence, love doesn't pay bills. But Jack swallowed it and said, "Send me everything you have," and Megan hesitated. "Everything," Jack repeated, "texts, emails, proof, whatever they showed you," and Megan whispered, "Okay." And then her voice broke. "Jack, I didn't think you survived this," she admitted, and Jack's eyes burned again, because that was the cruelest part. She had already buried him in her mind. The call ended, and the elevator was silent except for the hum of movement, and Sarah's voice shook. "So she was blackmailed?" she asked, and Jack stared straight ahead. "Maybe," he said, "or maybe that's the story she's using to clean her hands." And Sarah swallowed, and Jack added, "Either way, Cole just stepped out of the shadows." And as the elevator doors opened to the parking level, Jack's phone buzzed once more, and this time it was a calendar invite from an unknown email titled, "Final meeting tonight," with one line in the message body, "Come alone if you want the truth about what Megan signed and what you're hiding." Jack stared at the invite, heart hammering, because the last words weren't just a threat, they were an accusation, and if Harbor Ridge believed Jack was hiding something, it meant they thought they had leverage beyond money. Jack lifted his eyes to Sarah, and Sarah looked back terrified but determined, and Jack realized part 3 was not going to be about saving a company anymore. It was going to be about surviving a trap designed by people who knew his secrets and used his own wife as the pen. And right as Jack stepped out of the elevator, his security chief received a message in his earpiece, and his face changed. "Sir," he said tightly, "my team reached Sarah's mother." Sarah's breath caught. "Is she okay?" she begged, and the security chief hesitated just long enough to break Sarah's heart before he even spoke, and he said, "She's alive," and Jack's stomach dropped, because when someone says alive instead of safe, it means something bad already happened, and Sarah whispered, voice shaking, "What did they do?" And the security chief swallowed, eyes serious. "They left a warning," he said, "and they said if you keep talking, the next warning won't be paper." Jack's chest went tight when his security chief said Sarah's mother was alive, because that word sounded like a rescue that arrived 1 minute too late, and Sarah's face drained of color as if the hallway itself had stolen her breath. Jack did not let panic take the wheel this time, because he finally understood the kind of people he was fighting. People who fed on fear, who rushed you, who made you sign, who made you cry, who made you feel alone. So he forced his voice calm and simple, like a man talking to a child in a storm. "We're going to your mom right now, and we're going to keep her safe." And Sarah nodded, but her eyes were glossy, her fingers clutching her phone like it was the only proof she was not dreaming. When they reached the car, Jack's security chief updated him in short, sharp sentences. The team arrived to Sarah's mother's apartment, found the door unlocked, no forced damage, but the living room had been turned upside down in a way that screamed warning, not robbery, and on the kitchen table there was a folded napkin with one sentence written in neat block letters, "Quiet people live longer." Sarah made a small broken sound like her heart had cracked, and Jack's jaw clenched so hard it hurt, because this was the kind of cruelty that didn't just threaten your life, it tried to steal your voice. Jack looked at Sarah and kept it simple. "They want you scared," he said, "because scared people stop talking." Then he turned to his security chief, "Move her mother to a safe location now," and the security chief nodded, already barking orders into his earpiece. The head lawyer from the meeting was still in Jack's mind, that smug face, that confident tone, the way he acted like the world was already signed and stamped. And Jack realized something important. Confident liars behave like the ending is fixed, but endings change when evidence moves faster than greed. Jack's assistant sat in the passenger seat, shaking, and whispered, "Sir, the board vote is in 2 hours." And Jack stared out the window at the city lights, feeling the weight of betrayal spread like ink. His wife, his CFO, his bank, his board, and a private firm with teeth. Sarah's voice trembled. "Mr. Hart, what if they hurt her again?" And Jack shook his head. "They won't," he said, "because from this second, every move they make will leave a trail." And Sarah swallowed, not fully understanding, but she trusted his certainty because it was steadier than her fear. Jack then did something he should have done months ago. He stopped treating this like a business problem and started treating it like a crime. He called a friend from years back, a federal investigator he once funded through a community program, a man who owed Jack nothing but respected the truth. And when the man answered, Jack didn't talk like a billionaire, he talked like a citizen. "I have evidence of fraud, extortion threats, and financial sabotage," he said, "and I have a witness." And the investigator's voice sharpened immediately. "Do you have proof?" He asked, and Jack looked at Sarah's phone, at the photos, the client list, the internal contacts, the threats, the bank alerts, and said one word that mattered. "Yes," and the investigator replied, "Then don't move alone, don't sign anything, and don't warn the people who did it." And Jack's eyes narrowed because the last part was the hardest. His instinct was to confront, but confrontation without strategy is just a gift to criminals. They pulled up to a private medical clinic where Sarah's mother had been taken for checkup because she was shaken and her blood pressure was high. And Sarah rushed inside, nearly running, and Jack followed a few steps behind, watching the hallway like it could hide knives in the walls. But when he saw Sarah's mother, an older woman with tired eyes and trembling hands, alive, breathing, clutching Sarah's fingers like she was holding onto earth, Jack felt a fierce anger settle into something useful: purpose. Sarah cried quietly, not loud, not dramatic, just the kind of tears that slip out when you've been brave too long, and her mother whispered, "Don't fight them." And Sarah whispered back, "I can't be quiet, Mama, I can't." And Jack heard that and recognized the heart of the story right there. Good people are often told to be quiet so bad people can stay comfortable. Jack stepped closer and spoke gently to Sarah's mother. "Ma'am, your daughter saved my life today," he said, "and I will not let anyone punish her for telling the truth." And Sarah's mother looked at Jack like she wanted to believe him, but life had taught her not to trust powerful men, so Jack didn't ask for trust, he offered action. He had the security chief assign 2 guards to stay with her around the clock. He arranged a temporary safe apartment under a different name, and he promised in plain words, "No one will reach you without going through me." And Sarah's mother finally nodded, still afraid, but less alone. Back in the car, Jack's phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Cole Bennett. "Meet me alone. If you bring anyone, you'll regret it. I can fix this." Jack stared at those words and felt his stomach twist, because only guilty people say "alone," and only manipulators say "I can fix this" when they are the ones who broke it. Sarah whispered, "Please don't go," and Jack nodded. "I won't go alone," he said, "but I will make him think I am." And Sarah's eyes widened. "How?" she asked, and Jack spoke like a man finally awake. "We're going to let Cole talk," he said, "because when liars think they're in control, they confess." And Jack called the investigator again and said, "My CFO wants a private meeting tonight. He's tied to the internal contacts list." And the investigator replied, "Good. We'll set it up." And suddenly Jack understood the twist of power. The same system that had been used to trap victims could be used to trap the hunters if you stayed calm and documented everything. The plan formed fast and clean. Jack would agree to meet Cole at a neutral location, a quiet restaurant private room, but Jack would not be alone. The investigator would be nearby, with legal authorization ready. Jack's security would be present at a distance. And most importantly, Jack would wear a discreet audio recorder so every word Cole said would become evidence instead of gossip. Sarah looked terrified. "What about the board vote?" she asked, and Jack's eyes hardened. "Let them vote," he said. "A stolen throne is still stolen." Then he added the simplest truth: "If I win the truth tonight, I win everything tomorrow." And Sarah swallowed, realizing this was bigger than a job, bigger than a clause. It was a fight for who gets to write the story, the criminals or the truth. Before the meeting, Jack did one more thing that felt like swallowing glass. He agreed to speak with Megan, not because he missed her, not because he wanted her back, but because her involvement was a lever, and levers move heavy doors. Megan answered quickly this time, voice shaky, and Jack spoke in short sentences. "Send me the blackmail," he said. "Send me what they showed you." And Megan whispered, "I don't have all of it." And Jack replied, "Then send what you have." And Megan hesitated, then said, "Jack, please, I didn't want to hurt you." And Jack's voice stayed flat. "You did hurt me," he said, "but you can decide what you do next." And Megan's breathing got faster. "If I help you, they'll destroy me," she said. And Jack answered with a lesson that sounded harsh but was clean. "They already used you," he said. "The only way out of being used is telling the truth." And after a long pause, Megan sent a folder, screenshots, emails, a short video clip, and one voice note. Jack opened the video first, and his blood went cold because it showed him at a charity event months ago, shaking hands with a contractor who was later accused of bribery. Someone had cut and stitched the footage to make it look like Jack was accepting an envelope. It was fake, but it was fake the way dangerous fakes are, believable if you already want to hate the person in the video. Jack understood in 1 second why Megan panicked, because the world eats scandal faster than truth, and Megan's voice note confirmed it, her voice trembling as she said, "They told me if I don't cooperate, they'll send this to the press and the government and you'll go down." And Jack felt a grim calm because now he had proof of blackmail tactics, not just suspicion. He forwarded everything to the investigator immediately. Then he looked at Sarah. "This is why you don't sign when you're scared," he said, "because fear makes you give away your future to someone who's lying." And Sarah nodded slowly, like the lesson was entering her bones. That night, Jack went to the meeting location with a plain jacket over his suit, no flashy watch, nothing that screamed billionaire, because he wanted Cole to feel comfortable and careless. Sarah stayed in a nearby room with the investigator, not because Jack wanted to use her as bait, but because she was the original witness and her photos tied the whole scheme together. Cole arrived 10 minutes late, smiling like a man who believed time belonged to him, and he hugged Jack's shoulder like they were still brothers. "Jack," he said warmly, "thank God you came." And Jack forced himself not to flinch at the fake comfort, because betrayal often arrives wearing familiarity. Cole sat, ordered water, then leaned in and spoke in a tone that was half warning, half pity. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said, and Jack kept his voice simple. "Why is Harbor Ridge in my bankruptcy paperwork?" he asked, and Cole sighed like a tired teacher. "Because you were going to collapse anyway," he said, "and someone had to control the fall," and Jack's hands curled under the table. "Control it for who?" he asked, and Cole looked him straight in the eye and said the most honest line he had said in years. "For the people who planned it," and Jack's heart thumped, because Cole was speaking like a man inside the plan, not outside it. Jack leaned back slightly, acting defeated. "Megan said you brought them in," he said, and Cole's smile tightened. "Megan says a lot," he replied, then he lowered his voice. "But yes," he admitted, "I introduced the right people," and Jack's stomach turned, but he kept going. "Why?" he asked, and Cole's eyes hardened. "Because you never listened," he said. "You treated warnings like insults, you treated advice like weakness." Then he smiled again. "You built an empire, Jack, but you built it like you were the only brain in the room." And Jack nodded slowly as if he agreed, because he needed Cole to keep talking. Cole continued. "Harbor Ridge isn't evil, it's just hungry," he said. "They see value where others see ruin," and Jack asked, "And where do you fit?" And Cole's lips curled. "I fit where I always fit," he said, "close enough to the numbers to steer the ship." And Jack asked, "So you steered it into rocks?" And Cole laughed softly. "No," he said, "I steered it into a sail." Then he leaned closer, voice low. "Do you know how many people wanted your company?" he asked. "Do you know how many investors begged to buy pieces? You blocked them, you said no, you said never." And Jack stared at him. "Because I didn't want thieves in my house." And Cole replied, "But you already had one." And Jack felt that line hit like a punch, because Cole wasn't just insulting him, he was describing him as prey. Jack asked, "What did you get?" And Cole's eyes flicked to the side for half a second, and that tiny movement told Jack everything. There was someone else involved, someone Cole still feared. Cole answered carefully. "I get paid," he said, "and I get to stop watching you burn money on pride." And Jack nodded slowly. "So you drained our cash reserves," he said. "You made the numbers look worse." And Cole shrugged. "I adjusted timing," he said. "I moved some payments, delayed some collections, created pressure." And Jack's chest tightened, because it confirmed Sarah's list wasn't just names, it was a blueprint. Jack asked, "And the clause?" And Cole smiled. "That's the beauty," he said. "Even if you win your lawsuit later, the recovery goes where it's supposed to go." And Jack kept his face blank. "Where?" he asked, and Cole said, "To the people who invested in your fall." Then he added, "Including your wife," and Jack's fingers twitched, but he kept his voice steady. "So Megan wasn't just blackmailed," he said, and Cole leaned back satisfied. "Megan was realistic," he said. "She understood that being married to a sinking ship is still sinking." And Jack swallowed hard, then asked the question that mattered. "Did you forge the Harbor Ridge letter?" And Cole's eyes narrowed. "Why would I?" he asked, and Jack held his gaze. "Because the filing stamp is wrong," Jack said, and for the first time Cole's calm cracked. Just a thin fracture, but Jack saw it, and Jack pushed. "That letter made it look like Harbor Ridge had already secured Megan," he said. "It pushed me to sign fast." And Cole's jaw tightened. "You're overthinking," he muttered, and Jack knew he had hit the center. Jack leaned forward, voice soft. "Cole," he said, "tell me the truth." And Cole's eyes turned cold. "The truth is you're done," he said. "And if you don't sign, you'll lose more than a company." And Jack asked, "Like Sarah's mother?" And Cole smiled faintly. "Careful," he said. "Names like that shouldn't be in your mouth." And that was the moment the air in the room changed, because threats are not business, they are crime. Jack stood up slowly, pretending to be shaken, and said, "I can't do this." And Cole relaxed slightly, thinking he had won. "Sit," Cole said. "I'll make it easy for you." And Jack sat again, then asked one last question, the question designed to make Cole confess the final piece. "Why did the board vote to remove me today?" Jack asked, and Cole smirked. "Because I sent them the report," he said, "the one that proved you're unstable." And Jack's stomach turned. "You called me unstable?" He asked and Cole shrugged. It was necessary, he said. The board needed a reason. Then he leaned in and whispered the cruelest truth. Nobody removes a billionaire unless they're sure the billionaire can't fight back. And Jack nodded slowly, then said, "So you needed me weak?" And Cole smiled. "Exactly," he said. "Bank freeze, lawyer pressure, spouse pressure, board pressure, and you sign." And Jack held his gaze and said quietly, "You just confessed." And before Cole could react, the door opened and the investigator stepped in with two agents, calm and firm. "Cole Bennett," the investigator said, "you are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and extortion." And Cole's face went blank for 1 second, like his brain refused to accept reality. Then his chair scraped back as he stood. "This is insane," he snapped. "Jack set me up." And Jack's voice stayed calm. "No," Jack said, "you set me up." And Cole's eyes darted, searching for an escape. Because liars always think there's a hidden door. Sarah appeared behind the investigator, trembling but standing, and Cole's face twisted with rage when he saw her. "You," he hissed, and Sarah's voice shook but stayed firm. "You threatened my mother," she said. "You tried to silence me." And Cole laughed bitterly. "You think you're a hero." He spat, "You're a waitress." And Sarah lifted her cracked phone and said the line that ended his power. "I'm also a forensic accounting student," she said, "and I know how to read traps." And Jack felt a surge of respect because that twist didn't make Sarah magically powerful. It made her painfully real. A young woman working hard, learning, and refusing to be quiet. Cole was handcuffed, and as he was led out, he looked back at Jack with pure hate and said, "You still don't get it." And Jack replied softly, "I get it now." And Cole smiled cruelly even as the cuffs clicked. "If you think I'm the top," Cole whispered, "you're still a step behind." And that sentence would have scared Jack earlier, but now it felt like a map. Jack turned to the investigator. "Who else?" he asked, and the investigator nodded. "Harbor Ridge is being investigated as we speak," he said. "But here's the thing," and he held up a second folder. "Your board chair's name is on their internal contact list." And Jack felt his chest tighten because betrayal truly was inside the walls. Jack drove straight to his headquarters with security and agents, and when he arrived, the board meeting was already in progress, the room full of serious faces pretending they were doing business. But Jack walked in with calm authority and evidence behind him, and the board chair stood up, offended. "Jack, you're not allowed." And Jack cut him off with one simple sentence. "The police are here." And the room froze as agents entered and asked for devices, records, and access. The board chair tried to speak, tried to smile, tried to frame it as a misunderstanding. But when the investigator laid out the internal contact list, the fraudulent bankruptcy clause template, the extortion texts tied to Cole, and the financial movement authorized by Megan's code, the board chair's face changed from confidence to fear. Because fear is what happens when liars meet receipts. Within hours, emergency court orders were filed to freeze suspicious transfers. The bank was forced to explain the protective measures, and the head lawyer from the original meeting was taken in for questioning after building footage showed his panic and his attempt to block the documents. Jack's personal attorney finally surfaced too, not missing, just bribed and hiding behind excuses, and that fact hurt Jack in a deep, humiliating way because it proved something simple. Betrayal loves silence, and silence is often bought. Megan, meanwhile, did not get a hero ending. She was brought in, questioned, and forced to face what she did. She cried, she claimed fear, she said she was pressured, and maybe some of it was true, but truth does not erase choice. And Jack looked at her across the room and said the cleanest sentence of his life. "You were not powerless," he said. "You were tempted." And Megan's face crumpled because she knew he was right. She cooperated fully to reduce her own damage, but she still lost the life she tried to save with betrayal. The marriage ended, the public saw the truth, and Megan learned a lesson many people learn too late. When you sell someone you love to buy comfort, the comfort you buy becomes a cage. The most shocking twist, though, came the next morning when Sarah, exhausted but alert, asked to review one more detail. The Harbor Ridge congratulations letter. Jack assumed it was written by Harbor Ridge, but Sarah stared at the header and noticed something small. The letter used an outdated company footer that Harbor Ridge had stopped using a year ago, and the spacing on the signature line matched a template from the same folder she photographed at her accounting office. Sarah looked up and whispered, "Mr. Hart." Cole wrote this letter, and Jack felt cold spread through his veins, because that meant the letter wasn't just a message from Harbor Ridge, It was a tool Cole used to rush Jack into signing while Megan's transfers moved. It also meant Cole's role was bigger than internal contact. Cole wasn't only helping Harbour Ridge, he was shaping the whole trap from the inside. Jack stared out the office window at the city he once thought he controlled, and he finally understood the real villain in his story wasn't one firm or one lawyer. It was the belief that power makes you untouchable, because that belief makes you stop checking details and stop listening to small voices. Jack held a press conference 2 days later and told the truth in simple words. His company was attacked by a coordinated fraud scheme, his finances were sabotaged from within, and a brave worker who had no title saved him by paying attention. He did not pretend he was perfect, and that honesty surprised people more than the scandal did. He announced major changes. Independent audits, a whistleblower hotline with real protection, a rule that no single executive could move funds without multiple independent approvals, and a public fund to support workers who report wrongdoing. Then he did something that made the room go silent. He introduced Sarah not as a waitress, but as the reason my kids will still have a future, and he offered to pay for her education fully, not as charity, but as investment in truth. Sarah stood at the microphone trembling, then said one sentence that felt like a life lesson for everyone watching. If something looks wrong, it's wrong, even if rich people say it's normal, and people across the country shared that line because it was simple enough for a 9-year-old and strong enough for an adult. Jack's company did not become magically perfect overnight, and his reputation did not become spotless in one speech, but the core outcome changed. The bankruptcy papers were never signed, the fraudulent clause was exposed, Cole was removed and charged, the board was cleaned out, and Harbour Ridge faced a public investigation that made other victims come forward, because when one person speaks, other silent people realize they can speak too. Months later, Jack visited Sarah's mother in the safe apartment, and the older woman held his hands and said, "Thank you for not letting fear win," and Jack nodded, humbled, because he knew the truth. Fear almost won, and he almost signed his life away. His final lesson became the one he repeated to every young entrepreneur and every worker in his company. Big falls start with small ignored details, and the loudest room can still be wrong, and sometimes the person who saves you is the person everyone told to stay quiet. And just when the public thought the story was finished, Jack received a final sealed envelope, not a threat this time, but a court notice showing a new filing. A class action case by multiple victims against Harbour Ridge, and at the bottom of the list of witnesses was Sarah's name, not as a waitress, not as a victim, but as a key financial witness who could help bring down the whole system, and Jack smiled for the first time in a long time because the twist wasn't that the billionaire saved the waitress. It was that the waitress helped save everyone. If you enjoyed this emotional story with betrayal, twists, and a real-life lesson, comment where you're watching from and what time it is there right now, and subscribe to this channel to support our growth.